Hello, my friends. This is April 8, and I welcome you to my Songs and Stories podcast. Take a second to subscribe today, and you'll never miss a song or another story. I'm sending this special Halloween story out to Esme and Evie and Sloan and baby Daniel. And I can't wait to see you in your Halloween costumes tonight. Isn't it nice to find a gentle podcast full of sweet sing-along songs and captivating stories that you know will delight and encourage your littles? Well, we all want more of that, and your family can have it. Sign up for the Stay Up Late with April 8 newsletter to receive the content your children love delivered right into your inbox. Watch for exclusive live storytelling episodes that your little people can watch over and over again, like they do. Sign up at april8.com. Find the link in the show notes. Well, hello, my friends. It's me, April 8, and I thought I'd sit outside today with this wonderful cricket on this beautiful warm afternoon in late autumn and tell you a little story about a pumpkin. All right, this one's called The Little Pumpkin and Lewis. Now, once there was a little pumpkin growing in a field full of pumpkins. He felt like a magical little pumpkin growing up in the warm dirt with the sun shining down upon him most days. He smiled up at the bright light, and it smiled down upon him and all the other pumpkins in the pumpkin field. And at night, he looked up in wonder at the stars, and he knew that his destiny as a pumpkin was to be magnificent. But as he grew, he looked around and, well, he noticed a few things. He noticed that the other pumpkins were growing large and that their skin was smooth and gleaming. And he noticed that there was a rock in the field right next to him, and that although they were friends, because it's always good to be friends with someone who's sitting right next to you day in and day out, well, the rock never said anything to him. And that rock, well, it made the little pumpkin grow in such a way that wasn't as nice and as round as all of the other pumpkins. Oh no, that rock made our little pumpkin have a funny dent in his side where it rested against him. And so the pumpkin got bigger and bigger and bigger, and just like all the other pumpkins. But he didn't grow round and smooth. He grew into a twisted shape that was all his own. And when October came, children came to visit the pumpkin patch, and they admired all of the pumpkins, and one by one, they began to pick the ones that they thought were the most beautiful and take them home with them. They'd say things like, "Oh, look, Mommy, I want that one," or "Over there, that one is perfect," or "What a jack-o'-lantern this one would make. Look, look." And every day, families and even school buses full of children came and chose pumpkins and took them home. But no one ever chose our little pumpkin. He was sure it was because he had a dent in his side. He was sure it was because of the rock. So one day, the little pumpkin had had enough. "Can you scoot over?" shouted the little pumpkin to the rock. But the rock said nothing. The rock stayed right where it was. "I'm sorry I yelled at you," the little pumpkin said after a while. But still, the rock said nothing. That night, the little pumpkin heard the cicadas begin their autumn song, and he turned his eyes to the sun setting in the west, a big, perfectly round orange circle in the sky. And the little pumpkin sighed. The first stars began to spread across the east, and the little pumpkin closed his eyes, and he went on to sleep. Maybe tomorrow would be a better day. The next thing he knew, there was a tap, tap, tap on his head. Tap, tap, tap. And the little pumpkin woke up with a start. And he thought, is it still nighttime? It's still so dark outside. I can't see anything. And then he realized that something was sitting on his head, because he could smell that there was something sitting on his head. And so he said, "Hey, get off my head!" And then that something moved out of the way. And well, no wonder it was so dark, for it was a jet black crow who replied, as crows so often do, "Caw, caw." "Oh, hello," said Little Pumpkin. "What are you doing sitting on top of my head?" "Why, you are such an interesting shape," said the crow. "I just came over to see what made you so special compared to all of the other pumpkins in the pumpkin patch." "Caw, caw," said the crow. "Oh, well, yeah," said the little pumpkin. "It's not me. It's the rock." And he looked over at the rock, who was just sitting there, silently, as usual. "Oh, I don't know about that," said the crow. "Why, you've become interesting all by yourself." "Really? Do you really think I'm interesting? Because nobody has picked me to go home with them. There have been families and children, and no one has picked me. And I want so much to be picked, just like all the other pumpkins." "Caw," said the crow. "Caw, caw." "I do understand. Perhaps today will be that lucky day, Little Pumpkin." "Oh, do you really think so?" said the little pumpkin. "I do," said the crow. "I do. Caw, caw." And off the crow flew, soaring up into the pink morning sky in that way that only birds can. And the little pumpkin, sitting on the vine next to his rock, well, he felt a little soaring too, for the first time in a long time, he was a little hopeful. Maybe the crow knew something he didn't know. Well, that very afternoon, a little boy named Louis trotted into the pumpkin patch. Louis had big ideas about what he was looking for. He began carefully inspecting every single pumpkin in the whole pumpkin patch. Everyone in his family had found their pumpkin by the farm stand right when they'd gotten there. But Louis had insisted on going out to the big field of pumpkins to find his own. And as I said, he knew exactly what he wanted, and he hadn't quite found it yet. His big sister, Louise, finally said, "Really, Louis? Come on. Well, how about this one? It's perfect. It's round and fat and the perfect shade of orange. What a great jack-o'-lantern you could make out of this one, Louis." "And then we could go home," said his dad under his breath. "We've been here for an hour," said his older brother Luther, with pleading eyes at their mother. "Well, you know Louis and his big ideas," said their mother. "There's no getting around them," said Luther. "I'm going to go get a caramel apple." "Well, that's a good idea," said their mom. "You all could go get a caramel apple, and I'll stay here with Louis. I'm sure he'll find something soon," she said, hopefully. And right at that moment, a crow swooped over the whole family and landed on a pumpkin a little further down the way. Louis ran to have a look at the crow, and that's when his eyes fell upon just the thing he had been looking for. He shouted, "Look at that cool rock!" "A rock, Louis?" his whole family groaned. "Yeah, it's so cool because it's making a funny dent in this pumpkin that's right next to it." And Louis pointed and he ran over, and he carefully picked up our friend, Little Pumpkin, who really wasn't so little anymore after all of those weeks of growing in the pumpkin patch. "Let me help you with that," said Luther, pulling Little Pumpkin off the vine. "Look at the way that dent makes it look like the pumpkin has a nose," said Louis. "It's perfect." "It does have solid jack-o'-lantern potential," agreed Louise. "I love it," said Luther. "Let's get it and some caramel apples, and then we can go home." "Good idea," said their mother and their father. And Little Pumpkin's heart soared. He had liked Louis from the moment he'd first watched him walk into the pumpkin patch. Louis was an artist. Little Pumpkin could just tell. Safely in Luther's arms, Little Pumpkin was carried over to the car and placed gently into the trunk. He was on an adventure now. He was going home. He was so delighted, and he thought of the crow, and he thanked him in his heart for helping Louis to find him. Well, the very next day was Halloween, and Louis turned our Little Pumpkin into the best jack-o'-lantern Little Pumpkin could ever have hoped to become. Louis had turned him into a witch with a big smile and triangular eyes. And it turned out that dent that the Little Pumpkin had been so worried about for so long made the perfect nose for a witch. Louis carried Little Pumpkin outside, and he placed him on display on the front porch. Louis lit a real candle, and he carefully placed it inside. And then Little Pumpkin glowed on the inside and the outside. He was marvelous. And all the trick-or-treaters came by that evening, and he could hear them say, "Wow, that is a cool jack-o'-lantern." And Little Pumpkin knew that his destiny as a pumpkin was to be magnificent, and here he was, shining into the night. He was so happy. And Louis came out and sang him a little song that went like this. "Jack-o'-lantern, jack-o'-lantern, you are such a lovely sight. As you sit there in my window shining bright in the night. You were once a little pumpkin growing on a pumpkin vine. Now you are my jack-o'-lantern shining bright in the night." I hope you have a wonderful Halloween, my friends. Snip, snap, snap. My tale is all told out. Thank you for listening to the April 8th Songs and Stories podcast. Subscribe today and never miss another story. Now, the very best places to follow me and my dog Roxy are on Instagram at April 8 Songs and Stories and on Facebook at April 8 and on my blog, april8.com. And that 8 is always spelled out EIGHT. Don't forget to sign up for the Stay Up Late with April 8 newsletter to get all the fun in your inbox. Please share the April 8 Songs and Stories podcast with your family and friends, and take a minute to write a review to help other parents find these stories for their children. Until we meet again, remember, I love you, and you are wonderful, just as you are right now. La, la, la.